Hi guys, this is Ashley, Legacy Farms Coffee, and it has been one heck of a week. About 8 days ago, 9 days ago, we did I've just been not happy with the roaster. I have an artisan roaster, which means it has no bells or whistles, and so I've added a few things to it here and there, and I've put that artisan program on it. Ended up putting a pilot light on it, and then a couple years ago, I traded a guy for some what were supposed to be Probat setup burners, and I highly doubt now that I know that that's what they really were. So the stand that they were in was poorly constructed. The little rosebud burners were really nice, and when I look at them online, they're like $49 a piece, according to which one you get. So I don't know enough about it. So I decided that I was going to upgrade that and give it a little more pressure. And so it was inches of water column. So I did that. And then it worked. You could tell it worked a lot better. It got me from like 10 inches of water column up to like 12.5. So it gave me a lot more control. But then I started looking at the coverage of my drum and some different things like that. And so I've been watching different things online, and I found just some basic burners, but I liked that they were like 9 inches around. So I hooked two of them together. I know that when I made the other upgrade, it was real sooty on my drum, and so the flame was more yellow than blue. So I was not getting enough oxygen. So I put in this thing called an aerator, or anyway, it's got little holes in it. So supposedly it starts pulling air in as the it's in the propane line, so you can hear it hissing, but it almost feels like it's blowing out. So I'm not sure exactly if what I've got is working right. But I ordered fittings, gas fittings, and all off of Amazon, which I would highly not recommend those. The first ones I got they were billed as gas pipe, but they were shiny and black. And so they were very lightweight. So I'm sending those back. And I ordered pipe that was called malleable pipe, and that seemed fine. The fittings were all very heavy and seemed fine. But the first time I hooked everything up, there was a lot of leaks, and so I didn't pay that much attention to them. I just went back in, and with gas pipe, one thing has to be unhooked in order to unhook the other thing, and it's a pain in the butt. So I added in four of the unions, and broke it into sections, so that was great. But this morning, I got everything put back together for the third time, and three T's right in a row, there was leaks on all of them. So I switched out all the nipples. I went to the store and bought new tees. And first thing I noticed is that the new tees I bought had a lot more threads on them. Threads went in deeper. So I put everything back together, and it took about 6 hours to get all the piping put back together. And once I did, there wasn't a single leak in those areas. So it was just a low grade. They were both from China, so you can't say that about it. But it was just a big pain in the butt. But I've been working on it for a week, and I've given a tour online of the roastery before. So out of like the 21 or 22 buckets of coffee that we keep stock, I think I'm out of 11 of them. So, and my two giant trash cans, I've got two like 40-gallon trash cans. One I just keep the honey roasted, and the other one I keep washed in. Both those are completely empty. So we're probably out of 80% of the coffee. What we have is some flavored coffee. The shelf, half the stuff off the display shelf that people pick from is gone. So today we were having a talk with people and convince them to buy one coffee rather than the other. So I'm going to be roasting tonight till at least midnight. But I see Corey is on. Can you hear me, Corey? I'll put you on if you want to come on. But I know very little about gas, and so that is definitely something I've learned a lot about. The first couple of upgrades I did were fairly easy. So how are we doing?
Hey, it's good.
I was talking tonight about the upgrades on my roaster. I started out with Amazon, and that didn't work out so well with my pipe fittings. So I finally had to go to the hardware store and pay a lot more money, but at least they didn't leak.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
So some of us learn the hard way. I'm one of those guys that learns the hard way. Hey,
Yeah.
Richard, how you doing? Well, Richard, I think our sales have been about the same. It's just I haven't been able to roast for the last like 9 days. And so that's I put it together one day and roasted with it. And before I was building this table to go around it, and I said, well, I'm going to just check everything because the last 2 or 3 times I've upgraded the gas, I've never had any leaks, and so I felt pretty comfortable. And we started checking those gas fittings, and stuff was just leaking left and right. So it's a miracle that the 2 batches I roasted, something didn't catch on fire. But so we finally got it where I don't think anything's leaking. I'm pretty confident in it. I fired it up and ran it to temperature, but then I had the podcast tonight. I wanted to knock that out, and so after we get off, I'll start bringing in some coffee, and I think I've got 3.5 hours of roasting to do tonight. And then tomorrow morning, it'll be making all the blends up that we're out of. We do an espresso blend, a breakfast blend, an Eli Mountain blend. We do one that's a flavored blend called warm vanilla rum. And then I do a blend with my Jamaica Me Crazy. And then I have a new blend that we do for Julia that's called, that Julia likes. It's called Julia's Joe blend, or it's just called Julia's Joe. And it's a blend. So once I get all the coffees roasted tonight, then I've got, it looks like about 9 orders behind me that they weren't able to fill today because we were out of one thing or another. So we're going to roast a little bit of everything tonight. So I feel pretty confident that the roaster will go. I mean, it's I've tried it before, so it's just we're going to have to do some fine tuning and get the pressure exactly right. The pressure gauge I got in today does not work. I just hooked it up, and so it does nothing. But it's an oil-filled gauge. I've never had one of those before, so I'm wondering if that's not it. But the roaster is supposed to have a max of like 20 pounds of pressure, and the gauge does nothing. So pressure-wise, we'll be roasting blind tonight. But I'm just going to watch the flames, and I'll sort of figure out what I think wide open is. And then I'll just do it to half turns and turns and watch my temperature. And just, it'll be more roasting sight and smell tonight than anything else. But I think 3.5 hours, I'll get everything knocked out. Tomorrow we'll be back on track again. And we're going to do a little bit of fine tuning and get a few little things going on it. Richard, I've got your order here. I'm going out to the container tonight, and I'll get that Mario Hipe, and I'll get your order out in the morning. And I've got to go find some Ica too for the Coronados. So I'll get both y'all's orders out tonight or in the morning. Julie's been packing orders for me. So how you doing, Corey?
Yeah, it's good. So I missed a little bit of the first part. What all did you upgrade on your roaster?
Well, my roaster is what you would call an artisan roaster. When I got it, the only thing it had on it was one thermostat, and it was a cheap foreign built thing, and it lasted about a month, and then it quit. I went out there one day, and the little gauge was just hanging straight down, showing it was 0 degrees, which for a Celsius thermometer, that's pretty dang cold.
Yeah,
so I was pretty certain it didn't work. And so for a little while, I used the meat thermometer from the house. I stole that from Julia and wired it in there. So I had sort of an idea. But then I had a group coming up to the farm, and I had them bring me a nice Ashcroft, like an industrial one. It works pretty good, but it's really slow. And so then I started researching the Artisan, that program. And the good thing about a steel welder, a steel roaster, is you can weld stuff to it.
Yeah.
So I bored a couple holes in it, and I mounted me some fittings. And I ordered probes from Fidget. I think they're out of Canada. I ordered some probes from Fidget, and got those in and got them brought to Honduras. Because originally my roaster was built in Honduras, and then I shipped it to the States. But once I got that going and calibrated and all, you could definitely tell the response time. Your digital stuff that runs through that Artisan program is instant. And so this, even though it's a good quality thermometer from Ashcroft or whatever, it's slower than the digital. It'll be 15 degrees sometimes, slower than the other one is. But it's good for a backup. And then I went into my air vent and I took it apart, and I built a butterfly valve so that I had a little bit of air control. And so those were the two main things I did to it. And then once I got it to the States, everything was a lot different on it, because I think purity of the propane, altitude was different. So it was almost like relearning how to roast to an extent. And I was at a customer's one day, and he had a Probat roaster, and it was one of the older ones. And we were talking about roasters, and I just asked him what his drum size was. And he says 22 by 22. And that's exactly what my drum size is. And then we were talking about how I roast on propane, he roasts on natural gas. And he mentioned the Probat comes with both sets of burners. And so I traded the guy green coffee for supposedly a regulator and all the propane burners that came with his. And I ended up I never got the regulator, which would have been very helpful to have. But then the base that the things, the little rosebud things or little burners went into, was always sort of rickety. So I felt like he had that made. And so constantly they were vibrating out, and the threads weren't very deep. And so they just seemed poor. The burners were really nice, but then I never got the regulator. And so when I hooked that up, man, it just blew fire out that thing like crazy. Well, come to find out, my burners were meant to be run on PSI, and Probat runs on inches of water column, which is hardly a pound or two of pressure. And so I had to go on a quest to try to find the regulator and get it, get all that figured out. And I finally did. But mine had one flexible hose that ran to this blue valve, which is blue stands for water. So they were using a water valve for the gas line. So I changed that out. And then about a year ago, I did all iron pipe. And so I went up to 1/2 inch, all iron pipe. And you could definitely tell a big difference. And so from there, I went in and added a pilot light to it. And then I put a pressure gauge on it so I could, really see exactly how many inches I was doing with, roasting with. And then I put a really sensitive needle valve on there. And so then I bought a bigger gauge that was inches of water column, where you could just really see the little increments on it. And that big needle valve would really adjust, really fine tune it.
Oh yeah.
And so that was, what I knew how to do. And so this last year, I've been talking about maybe going up, up the size on the pipe and putting in redoing my burners. And I got to looking, and those burners were $49 a piece. And the thing I wanted to do was probably add at least 8 more burners to my setup. So I just got to looking online at the different burner setups that were out there. And so I bought them. And the first thing I did was just hook it up real quick. And I didn't have any pressure. And then so I probably knew there was going to be some problems. Well, they need PSI. They need to run on about 10 to 12 pounds of pressure. And I only had less than 2. So I had to convert everything from inches of water column setup to regular PSI, which just means getting a different regulator.
Yeah. So now you're back to where you started.
Basically back to where I started, except for I couldn't find my original regulator until after I'd bought and installed one. And then this morning I found the other one. So, but then my pilot light was set up for inches of water column, and you couldn't convert it because it was just blasting a flame out that bad boy. So I took my regulator and built it into my system to where I have a low pressure regulator just for the pilot light. And then I've got the regular regulator for everything else. And so we tested it the other day, had some leaks, and I've been chasing leaks. And then finally today I went to the store and bought some tees, and that solved a lot of my problems. And I went with full threaded nipples so that I could, tighten it up until it hit the inside of the tee.
Yeah.
And so that stopped my leaks. And I was Teflon taping them with something called Blue Monster, and I was Teflon pasting on top of that. And man, I was pouring it to it.
Yeah.
So right now, I don't think I have any leaks. The aerator thing that I put on it makes me a little nervous because it feels like it's blowing out. And so I'm probably going to call the local construction company and have them send one of their gas guys out to look at it. And just for peace of mind, I think I want to make sure it's working right.
Yeah.
But because I know my old burners weren't getting enough oxygen, and so they were burning yellow instead of blue. And so now I've got a lot of blue flame now, but I would like to have all blue flame, and I know that's attainable. But I've either got to get some kind of a mixture right, or there's something I'm not doing right. Yeah, well, I didn't know what my B2, Richard, I don't know, Corey, if you can see Richard's questions. That was the problem. I don't know what my BTUs were before. And after the deal I made with the other guy, I don't feel comfortable in calling him and asking him about it because I think he knows he hoodooed me on that deal. And so I don't know what my BTUs were before I started, but each of the 2 burners I put in are rated at 100,000 BTU, which is way more than I wanted, or way more than I need. But that was the only setup I could get that was close enough. And I figured I don't have to turn it wide open. So I'm trying to get it to where I'd like to have 120 to 150,000 BTU. I think that's going to be, I looked at the biggest rosebud burners I could find and calculated how many I had. So I feel like I had about 70,000 BTU before. And so now I've got double that. So once I get everything running tonight, I'll play with, or tomorrow or next day, I'll have my good working pressure gauge in the building, and I'll be able to start fine tuning the machine and trying to figure out exactly how to make my profile the way I want it, and how much pressure to put on the machine in order to get the pressure I want here in the house. So there'll be a lot of twerking it, and fine tuning it over the next couple of days, but I think I'm close enough, and we'll see after tonight whether we're back in business roasting, or if I have to go to one of my customers and roast at their place for a couple of days. But I took my time, and I changed up a lot of my controls, because before there was an on button for the drum, which ran the air, and there was no adjustment on it. There was an on button or on and off for the cooling tray, and that was it. And there was one little water valve that you either turn on or off, and that was the gas. And it was one of those 90-degree turns. So, and that was the only control I have. So now I've got a lot more control. I just need a really good gauge to watch my pressure with. And then once I have that pressure gauge working, then that's how I do my profile as to minutes of roasting and pressure on the gas. And so I make notes of those two things while I'm roasting, and then I make a note of, at 6 minutes and so many pounds of pressure, what was my temperature and where was my airflow. I basically have 3 airflow settings from where I used to have none. And so that'll be my next step is I'm going to, I built better access panels on the machine. The one blower runs the cooling tray and the drum. And so I'm going to separate that to where I have, different ones. And then I'm going to put a lot bigger cooler on the cooling tray, or fan thing on the cooling tray. So those are just, there's always something that you can be doing. And so I want it to be, I want to improve it all that I can. Yeah, Mr. Richard, the heat's working pretty good on it. I ran it at like a half a turn, and it went up to like 320 in 10 minutes, which is probably about right. On these bigger machines, it takes a while for the heat to soak into the drum and all that. So you really don't get it. I like to warm mine up for about at least 30 minutes before I start roasting. And when I had inches of water column, that was my gauge. I had 12 was the max. And so I would put it on 3 and let it warm up for about 25, 30 minutes. And then that was pretty much saturated, penetrated that heat into the drum. And at that point, then I would, we did a soak method on a lot of coffees. So at that point, I'd shut the gas completely off, drop the coffee in, and leave it for around a minute to a minute and a half until I got to that tipping point. And then I'd throw it up to like 6, which is about halfway wide open. And then you start pushing that temperature up the profile that I wanted. So I'm not an expert trained roaster or anything like that. So I just have to figure it out. And mainly I can tell if I'm lucky to have some pretty brutally honest customers. Sometimes you want to cry a little bit inside. They're so honest with you. But, I've been lucky that they're honest and said, I really did not like that coffee. And then, you start asking them why and stuff like that. And so I've changed up a couple coffees, and it really helps with blends when you're trying to come together a blend. When I did this, Julius Joe was the last blend we did. And it's just come out. It hasn't been out very long. So when I get caught up this week, I'll make about 50 3 or 4 ounce bags, and I'll start putting it in with my roasted orders and let people start trying that. And then we'll do a discount on it, so we'll make it like $4 a pound cheaper than the other coffees, and see if we can get people to try it, and just sort of see how it goes. But it's a good coffee. It's what I'm drinking now. One reason is because I like it. The other reason is I'm completely out of Marciesa, Bourbon, the Perinema. I'm out of all my favorite coffees. I'm out of the Wash Lempira, Ika2. I'm out of everything. And so just lucky.
You're getting more in next month. Is that right?
I've got a meeting with Anna as to where she's at with the selecting right now, but she started on Peaberry, which is the very last thing we do.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm hoping in about a week to 10 days, we'll be able to, got our numbers close enough that I'm going to go ahead and guess at the number, and we'll start the paperwork this week. So as soon as they'll assign us a container, we'll be ready to ship. As soon as we have that number, then they'll start printing our burlap bags.
Oh, yeah. How long does the container take to get here once it leaves?
It only takes about 5 days.
Oh, I see.
From the day it leaves, but you gotta clear customs and immigration, or not immigration, customs and the FDA and all those guys have to put a stamp on it. So sometimes it's in port a week to 10 days. And then sometimes it misses the boat it was scheduled for, and so you have to wait another 4 days to catch the next boat. And so there's a lot of factors. So I usually it's pretty good to say 30 days. But I'm going to be on a mission trip. I've got a team coming to the farm, so we won't be shipping any coffee until probably the 25th or 26th of July. That'll be I come back one of those 2 days. And so Julia, it's according to how adventurous is, she wants, but she may go ahead and put some stuff online. I don't press her on that a whole lot, because if I'm out of town, 100% of the work goes on to her. But if she feels like cracking a few bags open, then she can start shipping out earlier. But I'm just glad she puts up with me the way she does, and that she does as much work in the shop as she does. For the last couple of days, she's done all the orders by herself. Well, her and Eli. So when we're gone to Honduras, Eli and I will be gone, so all the work will be on her. So, but I think she'll probably at least pull out. I'll probably get her to pull out a few of the nicer bags, something that's a little more exotic and stuff like that, and at least put those online. And I think we had some good flavor notes on naturals, and we had some pretty cool flavors on the Perry Neyman Marciesa again. And then we had a lot of good 86, 87, 88 coffees again this year. This is the first year we had like 3 lots of 81. They weren't big lots, but we had 3 lots that were 81. So that was sort of disappointing. It's still specialty grade, but it's the lowest scores we've ever gotten.
What do you think made a difference?
I don't know. I had them pull soil samples before they started fertilizing to see if there's anything that's supposed to be there that's not there. But when I went to test, the guy told me that that our farm is really unusual, because he said a lot of farms had a lot of bad lots, and we had 1 lot that was or 2 lots that were just ruined. They were over fermented, but that could have been our processing. But and that happens when we try to push one and ferment it real hard. We ruin some lots every once in a while. But if you don't take a risk, you're not going to get anything interesting. But our anaerobic coffees did pretty good this year. They cupped 85s and 86, but they had different flavors, and so that's good. But yeah, I had 3 lots. Do what now?
Is the anaerobic something new you're doing, or have you done that before?
We did a lot of it like 2 years ago. Last year, I didn't do anything more than some test lots.
Oh, yeah.
But then this year I did a couple 100 pounds of it. But it pre-sold pretty quick. I had just people that are willing to go ahead and pay early to get it, and they're people that are marketing a lot of the anaerobic stuff. For me, it's the cupping scores were the same. The only different is the cupping notes were completely different. Mm-hmm. And so I enjoy that, because it gives me something that I didn't have before. But I shouldn't. I think it's probably a bad practice to let somebody buy it. But this year we were doing a new classroom for the farm and some things like that. And so somebody offers to send you a check 3 months before the coffee gets to the States. I just went ahead and took it and let them have it. And so we needed to put a roof on the kids' classroom at church. So we have a roof now, but I'll probably have 40 or 50 pounds of the anaerobic that I'll put online. Oh, yeah. And what I'll before I send out an email thing, any of the specials or anything different that I have, I'll do it on the podcast first, and then a week or 2 later, I'll do it on the on like an email send out. Now, Richard, did you get wasn't it a Marciesa Natural last year? Did you get some of that? Oh, okay. Richard's asking about that. I've never heard of double fermented, so I'm gonna have to Google that and see what that's about. I'm gonna make a note of that and try to look it up. The we had a really good Marsellesa last year that had just some crazy flavor notes of it, and so this year I did more of it. It's been chaos here. I don't have my notes with me, but I'll have them next week as to what that Marsellesa Natural cupped this year. But I'm pretty sure it was an 87, but I'm not sure what the flavor notes are. But I'm not going to pre-sell it this year, and I'll just let like regular customers have it. So if anybody got it last year or anybody on the podcast, they'll get first shot of it, before we put it on. And generally, what I do is I'll just put it out there. I won't put it online. I'll just tell everybody on the podcast, if you want the anaerobic, just order Lempira washed and put in the notes, replace it with anaerobic. And then, so it won't cost you any more per pound, and you'll get first shot at it before we put it online. But I know I've got 50 to 70 pounds of the anaerobic, and I'll probably have at least 200 pounds of the Marsellesa Natural, which was a really nice coffee last year. This is the first time today I've got to sit down and drink some coffee, so that's why I'm yawning, I guess. I've spent 30 hours this last 5 or 6 days working on that roaster. So I think I finally got it to the next stage. But every year I try to do something a little different.
I don't know what all you plan to talk about in this podcast, but I'd be interested to know how you do the anaerobic process.
It's nothing complicated, and there's a lot of different ways of doing it. Last year, what we did was parchment anaerobic. This year, we did it'd be called a natural. So we did it in 55-gallon barrels, and it's got one of these air gap valves on the top of it. And so you fill the valve with water, and so it'll let the oxygen out, or let the gas out, but it won't let any oxygen in. So we pack it completely tight, shake it, pack it down. So we get that 55 gallons full of coffee in the cherry, and we make sure there's no green, nothing. And then you lock it up for this one. We did 72 hours, and we had it in an open area with just a small top on it on the building. So it was like an 8x12 little, I don't know, pavilion, so to speak. And so it got morning sun, afternoon shade, and it got some afternoon sun. And then it's set for 72 hours. And then we opened it up. We processed it and washed it. And so that was pretty much all we did.
I see.
So that's the basic of the anaerobic. It's locking it up. Last year we pulped the coffee, and then we packed all the parchment in there after we washed it, and then left it for 72 hours. And that was very not exciting. It was just tastes like a regular old coffee. I like messing with the honey and the naturals. I like stewing it in its own juices or letting it dry in its own cherry. Yeah, like I was saying, Mr. Richard, I'll announce it a week or so before online. And we're going to do a bunch of podcasts during those middle 2 weeks in July, because we've got a lot of stuff going on the farm. And then so we'll make sure we keep everybody updated when the container gets there. This group that's coming, it's their 25th mission trip to Honduras. The group came with my church the first time we ever came. First time they came, first time I came was in 1998. And so they've made, in the last 26 years, they've made 25 trips. They didn't go during COVID, but they sent me a check for a couple $1,000 so that we could work on our church building with some of the money they would have spent. So they're coming out for 8 days and going to do some mission work, going to do a medical and dental clinic. But we're going to have 3 combined parties. It'll be 10 years since the day that we bought and moved to the farm in Honduras. It'll be Eli's 14th birthday, and it'll be the 25th trip that group has made. So we've got some women making traditional Honduran cakes. I'm going to break out my White Mountain ice cream maker, and we'll make a little bit of ice cream. We're going to invite 100 and something kids out to the library, and have just a big day of it. And so we'll take an entire Sunday and we'll do church early that morning, and then when that's over for the rest of the day, we're just going to have a big event. And the cakes should be big enough for 100 kids. That's what the goal is. But and as far as you were talking about the anaerobic is fun. I still haven't had anything that excited me so much. I have a 1,500 gallon tank on the farm that I want to make into an anaerobic tank. The problem is all the other farmers are so tight-lipped. When they have a good anaerobic coffee, they're real tight-lipped about it.
Oh, yeah.
And for example, this year, there was 121 farms entered up to 3 samples each in the Marcala Coffee Festival. And there was only like 6 anaerobic entries out of what was potentially, what would that be, 125, 363 or something like that samples that were sent in to be judged. And they gave out the top 20. You know, there's a 20 or top 25 list. And I only think 1 or 2 of them made the top 25 or the top 20. And so I think this year my Perianema was 7th place, and my Marsellesa was 12th place. Last year my Mario Hipe was 4th place, and I had 15th place on my Bourbon. But it was a really close competition this year. My 7th place coffee that I had this year scored like on an international competition. They do 5 cups when they cup. And so I got an 87.5 for my 7th place. My
Wow.
15th place was 87.05. So there was 0.45, less than a half a point difference between 15th place and 7th place.
Wow.
And first place was 88.16. So there was 0.65 difference between first place and 7th place. And that's a pretty specific judging when they give a coffee an 88.16. That's I've never seen a score like that. You know, when they get down to 0.05, 0.1, 0.15, that's pretty close. But when it's the difference between 0.15 and 0.16 and 0.18, those are pretty tight scoring.
Yeah, they're splitting hairs there.
Yeah. But the same coffee that gets you an 87.5 in an international cupping will get you right close to an 89 in a regular cupping. And so that coffee is gonna, I'm not sure which lot it is, I'll have to look it up, but that coffee will really be a good coffee this year. I hope I have a crap load of it to sell. But last year our Perianema was probably like 89.25 because it ended up scoring a regular score of 88 or 88.25, something like that. And that's the one that had grapefruit and something else in the flavor profile.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so it was a really unique coffee. But again, I'm not a good enough roaster to roast and find that grapefruit. Or maybe I'm just not a good enough cupper. Maybe I'm an amazing roaster, but I have a bad tongue or something. We're gonna, Mr. Richard, we're gonna try to start doing our own vanilla. We're going to try to start growing some in our solar dryers on the farm, because it'll grow if we can keep it humid enough. And so I'm going to do a misting system, because I can keep my solar dryers during the summer. I can get them up to like 125, and then we can run the wood stoves during the winter to keep it pretty hot in there. And so I'm going to try to do a misting system that'll keep it super humid in there. And we're going to try to grow some vanilla, because I would love to have some more. I grow a cardamom spice on the farm, and I import that. So I want to try to do vanilla and cocoa and import those. I'm not sure how cocoa will work, but I think I've got vanilla figured out. But we'll have to wait and see. But also next year, I've talked to a mill, and I've made some deals with a couple other farmers. So next year I'm going to have, they won't be grown on my farm, but I'll have offerings from some other farms next year. So I'll have a Sargi Moore. There was a couple more. My Katui never was earth shattering, and so I cut it all down. But my friend Avon, he's got a nice yellow Katui. So I'm going to have his yellow Katui next year. And I'm going to have a variety that's called Mocha that I'm working real hard on buying that. That's going to be more like a $12 a pound coffee. And so we'll just have to see how much I can afford to buy of it. But I'd like to at least have a bag or two of it, next year, because it is amazing coffee. It's just like hot chocolate almost. Have you ever had homemade hot chocolate in Honduras from the cocoa plant and all that? It's really good.
Mm.
I've never tried to make any kind of flavorings or anything like that. I'm working on hey, Corey, you said you couldn't see the questions on the screen.
I figured it out.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm working on a rub that's got cardamom spice in it. It's got a little bit of powdered coffee cherry tea, and then it's got some of my full natural roasted to a darker roast. And all of that is mixed in with a lot of different flavorings and stuff. I've been working with that AI thing and to come up with some rubs, and I asked it, what kind of a meat rub can I make that had those 3 key ingredients in it? And man, it just spit it out there. It gave me like 2 or 3 recipes. And so we're trying to tweak those. And so it's getting barbecue season. So I got to get my grill out pretty quick. And we're going to start trying to test some of those. So the next time y'all put in an order, ask me about it, and I'll throw in some bags, and y'all can try them for yourself. And we'll see if we can't tweak them together and figure it out. The first couple I did, that my cardamom spice is very strong, and it overpowered it pretty bad. So we're going to try to keep playing with it. And if we could ever figure out how to grow vanilla and stuff like that, my goal is in 8 years just to be down there and playing and let my boys handle the day-to-day stuff here at the roastery. And that's my goal. So I don't know if that'll happen. And when I'm there more, I'll be able to play more with some of the vanillas and cocos. And we've looked into either making a contract with somebody that grows cocoa, or maybe renting a farm in another area, and hiring somebody to sort of grow it for me. I get questions on both the Facebook pages and the Instagram while the thing's running. I try to answer them as best I can. So if I don't answer your question, I'll get back to you as soon as I can, or as soon as the podcast is over, I'll answer them. But all right, Corey, what kind of roaster do you have?
I built a 5-pound air roaster.
Okay. Is that gas or electric?
It's all electric.
Okay.
And I hooked it up with automation. So I create the profile that I want to try, and then it just follows the profile for me.
But I've had some friends that did because I started out with Fresh Roast and the Beemore and Skillet and Popcorn Popper, and Yeah, I did those things when I first started out. And then I bought my giant roaster, and then I bought a Hucky. And so the Hucky was harder to learn to use than the big roaster.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, because my big roaster had no control, and the Hucky you could do all kinds of stuff with it.
Yeah,
So
that's a challenge. The more control
it
you
took
have,
me.
the more you got to use it.
Yeah, and you can't just say, oh, all I have to do is this and that. I only have
Yeah.
two things to change, so that makes life easier. But with that Hucky, man, I didn't have any idea, and I'm trying to YouTube do a Roaster Joe's school at on YouTube, and I learned quite a bit from that. I still get lost a lot of time when I get into a group of like professional roasters, these guys that only do 93 plus coffees and all. And man, they're talking about how many seconds in the development they do this and all this. And I'm like, man, yeah, I get lost on a lot of that. But I think there's so much that you can tell by the sight, the sound. And my wife had two buckets that got mixed up. And she said, well, I know they're both Lempira. And so I can look in the bucket and tell which one's honey process and which one is a washed.
Yeah.
Natural, you can smell that stuff a mile away. It's easy.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But I can't smell the difference between the washed and the honey, but I can see the bean, and I know that I roast them differently. And so I can see how I roasted it, and I can see a lighter crack inside the washed than I can in the honey. And there's some different things, but there's different beans like my Marseillaise and Bourbon. Those are distinctive looking beans. The Perinema is long and skinny. I still have a hard time seeing the plants out in the farm. When there's two, so we got them mixed up one time, and somebody planted yellow Catuai with a batch of Lempira. I can tell those plants apart when they're side by side. But I can't walk into another guy's farm and say, oh, hey, this is nice Bourbon you have. I don't know coffee that well. My guys do. And so that's the saving grace there. But, it's to quote Donald Trump. He said, I'm not the smartest man in the world, but I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I have the smartest people in the world working for me. And so when it comes to coffee, I've got some pretty good guys working for me, on the farm. And the hardest thing on the farm is working with their personalities. Some of them pout. They're not aggressive at all. So if there's any conflict, they tend to quit rather than do anything else. And that's because they live in a world where everybody's going to treat them the same, which is poorly. Everybody's going to pay them the same, which is poorly. And their expectations for life are pretty much our worst day. Is what they live through every day. And you and I lose internet. We're griping. We're on the phone. They lose electricity for 2 or 3 days, and they're not calling in asking about it. They just don't have electricity. Let's just go buy some candles, and when electricity comes on, we'll have electricity. It's a whole different way of doing things. But the personality is probably the hardest part of coffee farming. You have so many different personalities. You've got the guy that says, the white guy is rich. Why doesn't he pay us more? And then you've got some people that are like, they really appreciate what you're doing for them. And some of them have that idea. They understand that I can't go in there and start paying everybody $20 an hour because I would be bankrupt in 6 months. And some guy from Hawaii got on one night and was saying that your problem is you're not paying everybody a fair minimum wage. And I said, what's that? He's like, well, you need to be paying your workers $15 an hour. And like, if you figure how much coffee I grow and how much I spend already, if you put $15 an hour into that, my coffee would be $9 or $10 a pound for the cheapest coffee, and 14, 15 for the higher cupping coffees. There'd be no way. And you would have to educate them what to do with that, because we made the mistake of starting to pay 25% more than the other farms the first year that we did coffee. And within the first couple of months, the first things I noticed happening, there were cigarette butts around the farm. And when I talked to the people there, and they're like, well, they've got money, so they smoke and they drink. And then we noticed Monday morning the attendance was crap. And then we noticed Saturday afternoons, wives were coming to the farm looking for their husbands because they were in a poker game or a dice game, or they were out drinking and wouldn't come home till Sunday. And then they either blow their money or blew half of it. And so we changed our strategy, and we started doing tending to their needs instead of just paying more. Because if you think about what your economic place is right now in life, you probably took advice from your dad, your granddad, uncles. We've all got a rich uncle out there somewhere. They don't.
Yeah.
Everybody in their family is poor.
Yep.
Everybody they've ever met, everybody they hang around with, everybody they go to church with, poor, poor, poor. And so they can't go to somebody and says, hey, I'm getting paid 25% more than I used to. What do I do with that money? Well, they go to the mall on Sunday where it's like an open market, and they're out there buying their vegetables, and they got an extra $20 in their pocket. They see a pair of white Nikes, so they go buy them.
Yeah.
Or they buy a cell phone, or they buy, and smartphones have no place in a coffee farm. There's way too much water on a coffee farm to have a smartphone. And, Neftali came to me one day and said, it's black. And I'm like, it won't come on. And I said, okay, let me look at it. And so that's back when you could pull the battery off, and it has those little hash things on the back of it. If the phone gets wet or if the battery gets wet, it changes colors. Yep. And I'm like, did you get it wet? And he's like, yeah, just a little bit. And I said, you remember when your wife came to you and told you she was a little bit pregnant? I said, you just can't get it a little bit wet, And so the phone was shot. And the problem was, because they worked for us and the stores know they get paid more money, the stores started giving my workers credit. And so for the next 6 months, he was paying on his brand new, I think it was a Galaxy 4 or something like that, for months. And it was dead, it was junk. And so, and then, I've had 2 guys that bought motorcycles. One of them wrecked it right off the bat. The other one blew the motor up, and now they're making payments and they got nothing. Bahidio sold I bring his coffee to the States. He spent his entire coffee crop on a motorcycle, wrecked it. And it's junk. And he lost his entire coffee crop. What he got paid for his entire crop. And now he has nothing to show for that whole year except a wrecked motorcycle. And so what we did was we started going to their house, and what Bahidio needed was a bathroom. So we built him a bathroom, then a shower. Then we started a home business for him. Then we started a second home business for him. Built him a little tiny bodega. Helped him get a decent kitchen in his house with running water in the house. Got the roof to quit leaking. Those things, because those were things he was needing. And even with that 25% more that we paid him, a brand new roof for his house was $900. So it would have taken him forever, even with that much more money, to save it up. And again, what are the odds that they're actually going to save it up? Some kind of an emergency happens, something happens, and life happens. And so we just decided it's better to start the nonprofit and try to generate some money and get some donations. And donations have helped a lot. We had like $11,000 donated last year. And so, hey, you got another coffee guy in there with you?
Yep, this is Jonathan.
And so we have 2. What's his name?
Jonathan.
I got a Jonathan, but mine's 6'1", 200 pounds. You got a little more growing to go. Yeah, maybe next year.
He might get there yet.
I bet he does. I hope he does. Happy and healthy. We've got 2 banks on the farm. One of them is for day-to-day loans, and the other one is to buy farms, specifically to buy farm. And so, those are things that we do with that donated money. And we have some loss on our bank, stuff like that, where people just can't pay or something happens. And so, there's just different things ways that we can help them without actually just giving them the money. And so the standard farm, we put them on a small, but they'll have to, if they buy a farm, they have to pay $4 a week until the first crop hits. And then when that first crop hits, we want a third of the profit out of that first crop every year until the loan's paid off. But in turn, we buy the crop, or we find somebody to buy the crop, and they're getting paid 3 times more money than they would if they sold it in town. So that third is pretty easy to come up with. And so, and then the farm will be paid off in 3 to 4 years after that. And then they'll see some real progress. And at that point, they have to have learned how to manage their money, because at that point, they're on their own. I can't tell them what to do with their money. But I try to every once in a while. I begged Bahidio not to buy that motorcycle. And I mean, it was the point where he was nearly at a divorce. I mean, he was sleeping out in the storeroom that he had. His wife was so mad. And I understand. Yeah, she was really mad. And because he just destroyed, all that the advances that they had made, he just destroyed it with that one stupid move. And he could have hurt himself pretty bad. And then what would he have done? So that's been the most difficult part, which, like I said, personalities and dealing with people like that. And that's why I've had a couple of my roasters have come out. I think Jose from Third Day is coming out again. I'm not sure if he's going to make it this year or the first of next year, but he and his wife came out to the farm and just had a really good time. Ben and Brian came out from Saturday Morning Coffee. But yeah, we've had some coffee people come out, and it's a really good experience, especially if you can stay a week or 10 days, especially if you can come out during harvest and you start seeing some of these day-to-day things and seeing how people live. And seeing the differences in the houses, and so and the differences that we've been able to make through a lot of donations and a lot of the money from our coffee farm too. But it's been fun, but there's been a lot of crappy days too. And so we're doing some management structuring. Anna brings her coffee to the States, but she's making so much money selling coffee now that she doesn't want to run the farm anymore. So she's making more than double selling coffee than what she makes on the farm.
Yeah.
So she's phasing down. I think we've got her. We're going to keep her at her regular salary, and we're going to cut her to, instead of 6 days a week, we're going to cut her down to 2, just because she's that invaluable to the farm. So she's going to work Tuesday and Saturday, and she'll make the same that she used to make working 6 days. And then we're moving our main guy. We're moving him to a different position, and which is what he's wanting, that different position anyway. And so we're hiring a new guy to do the farm boss part of the day-to-day field work. He'll oversee that. So that'll take, that'll be a hard setback to get everybody set up in their new positions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we getting more of Anna's coffee this year?
Do what now?
Are we getting more of her coffee this year?
Anna's, yeah, she's going to have, acre per acre. When I put her numbers to my numbers, she had something like 65% more coffee per acre than I did. And so it's crazy. She's got a small farm and she's got a big family, and so they're able to work on it and tend to it a lot, more than we can on my farm. But hey, so it just makes a difference, how much you can tend to those plants, and there's a lot more TLC that goes into hers. Ours is a lot of times we don't have workers, so the coffee farm takes a hit and can't fertilize as quick as we want to because the workers are in the United States this year, and so that's really hurt us a lot. But Anna's husband is really good at coffee, and so he's good to have around on the farm or on their farm. So it makes a big difference. So, but he's on my list to try to hire also. I'd like to try to hire Anna's husband. Right now, I've got him finishing up my classroom in an apartment we're building. But so because we've had people that wanted to come out at the same time, and so we've had to say no to one group and yes to another. So we're building a second apartment on the farm, and then we've already built the children's library, and that'll be set up to where people can stay in that. And then we're adding another bathroom with hot water for when the gringos come. We'll have hot water. We've already got Wi-Fi for them. So the goal is to be able to have two apartments, and we've got different bed configurations according to who's coming. But the goal is to be able to sleep about 30 people. So next year, the goal is to get some churches to support us a little bit and try to build a sort of a barrack styled thing where we could put 30 people just in the barracks. We do triple bunk beds, so the bunk beds are 3 high, and then have a set of I don't like the barrack styled bathrooms. I like individual everything in the bathroom. But to have enough bathrooms that 30 people could take showers pretty quickly and efficiently. But it's all sort of one little step at a time. But right now, I think the group we got coming now is 20 people, and we're going to fit them all in to the different places we have. So Alexandra will be finished with that apartment in about 2 weeks. The group's coming in 5 weeks, so it'll be just perfect timing for all that. So it's just baby steps, and the more people we get to come out to the farm, once we get the second apartment done, we're going to put it on Airbnb, so we'll actually start renting the apartments out. Because there's a lot of people that come to Marcala, because Marcala and Copan are the two main coffee fairs every year. So there's a lot of people that visit those two regions from the United States, Japan, Germany. And we've had Germans, Taiwanese, Chinese. We've had lots of different countries come out and visit the farm, just for a day visit or something. But we've got to get more publicity, and that's part of the way to get it. And I've got to get somebody to start and help me look over my Instagram page and find out. It's just struggling to grow. And so I need to find a customer that's good at that and see what we can work out. Paying green coffee or roasted coffee, or we got coffee, we just don't have money yet. But we're the last 2 years, most of the money we've made, I've put into grinders. I've got some really nice grinders. I've got a couple of Wayfield machines. I've got 3 foot pedal sealers. We're just been little by little setting up to where we can handle the big loads when they come. 2025 crop is going to include coffee from 6 different farms in bulk. And so this year I'm going to bring in like 200 bags of coffee. Next year I'll bring in a full container, which is going to be probably 350 bags of coffee. And they'll be from as many different farms. I don't want any varieties that I already have. And so they'll be all different varieties. So we'll have a whole lot more to offer. And on our roasted side, we'll have a whole lot more blends. And that's just about all I know how to do, is get ready for, more customers one day. So hopefully that's in the future, in the cards for us in the future, is have a few more customers. Because you
always want more customers, right?
Well, the green customers are where you make your least profit. Your profit comes from selling roasted coffee. And I don't want to lose my green customers, because those are the most loyal people that I've got. And the smaller the roasters, the more loyal they seem like they are. I've only got 5 customers that have like big roasters that order like a half a pallet to a full pallet or 2 pallets a year. Most of our coffee is broken up over the green coffee, 150 different home roasters.
Oh, wow.
Or what you'd call farmers market. that first step into roasting.
Oh,
And I think most people do farmers markets as their first step, because that's the least regulation in the coffee business, is doing the farmers market and then selling friends and family, and all those things sort of happen all about the same time. Now, how many pounds you said your air roaster can do? 5?
Well, I've actually, once I actually getting it lofted is the hard part, but once that's going, I've actually gotten up to 9 pounds roasted at a time.
Really? Man.
Yeah, but it'll do 5 easily.
And that's every 12 minutes, 10 minutes? What is your turnaround on that?
Yeah, pretty much. Yep.
That's what I was wanting on mine, is the ability. I was doing 15-minute turnaround.
Yeah.
And the reason it's so long is because I let the drum cool down a little more between roasts, so that when I kill my gas and I drop the coffee in cold, then I like to let it drop down to about 220 degrees before I hit the gas again. And that gives me a little more control on the way up. With the, if you just drop it if you run it to say 425 and then drop it, and as soon as it all is in your cooling tray, you close the drum and throw in another 25 pounds, then you may be at 375 degrees. That's not a whole lot of profile in there. And so I like to have a little more, especially I roast a lot of natural and a lot of peaberry. And so with those, I'm having to, I don't like to drop the peaberry and stuff in at a real high temperature. I'm trying to plug the charger in, but it seems like one of my family members has borrowed it and ran the battery all the way dead. So I'll have to find out who that person was.
Yeah, Richard, it's 10,000 watts, I believe, is what I'm running.
And so is that 110 or 220 or?
Yeah, that's 220.
Well, it shows it's 99% charged, but it's not working anymore. I think my battery is shot, maybe. Yeah, something's going on with it. But I've got 15%, and I need to get my roasting done before 1 a.m. So I'm going to have to start doing getting my buckets loaded and start trying to roast. It sounds like they're playing. Cousins are here. They're playing football outside the window here. Corey, I hope you can jump on again. The next podcast we're going to do an email mail out and try to have a few more people on. If you've ever got questions or topics or something you want us to talk about, you're welcome to send them out there. I'll research them the best I can. And in July, we're going to have 2 guests on from Honduras, but one of them speaks pretty good English. The other one speaks really good English, and they are organic farmers there in Honduras, and they're really knowledgeable about the organic side of it. And they're going to start coming to work for us on a part-time basis, where they come in and help us do our microorganisms and things like that we spray on the farm. And so they're going to come in and talk more specifically coffee and how we do the different processes. We're going to pick like 3 different things that we do on the farm, or that we're starting on the farm. Right now we just do one that we're going to start doing on the farm, and they're going to explain a little more about how they do that and how they cultivate those microorganisms and grow them, and how we make a thing called bokashi, and there's one called yogurt. I don't know anything about those 2 things. I learned them in organic school like 8 years ago, and I forgot them like 7 years ago. But we have all the equipment to be growing our own microorganisms and stuff on the farm. The guy that was doing it left, and we haven't replaced him with anybody. So these 2 guys are going to start doing that, and we're going to incorporate as much organics in as we can. We're still going to do 2 conventional fertilizings a year, but if we could get that down to 1, because normally you do 3, so we only do 2 because we do 3 organic fertilizings on top of that to make up for that 1 that we don't do. So we went from 3 conventional fertilizings to 2, and then in order to do that, we had to add 3 organic fertilizing in there. And so we started doing that a year ago. So it'll show in the 2025 crop a little more than it does in the 2024 crop. And then I guess the goal next year is to get the coffee to the States in May. So one of the goals is to try to get a laser selector. So we're a little bit earlier in the year because we still want to age our coffee like we have been doing, but we want to speed up that selecting process. And that's the only way to do it. Is with one of those laser sorters. But if you want to go into detail about some specific thing, or if you want to do something on roasting, especially if you want to do something on air roasting, we'll start inviting some air roasters on and just have like a little online forum or something, or home built, some of the guys that built their own. We could do anything you want to on the podcast. We usually get 200 or 300 views over the 60 days after the podcast. So it's not Joe Rogan viewers just yet, but I get a lot of questions in the weeks following the podcast, for the podcast that we do. But anything you want to cover, we'll cover, or any questions, just shoot them to me. And Mr. Richard, you do the same thing.
Cool.
Yeah, and next time we do a podcast, we'll maybe set up where we can get a clip or something, or watch you roast a little bit and see what yours looks like, and you can explain a little bit about what all you did, or if you want to keep your trade secrets a secret, that's fine too. But,
they're not trade secrets. I just kind of figured it out as I went, so it's just how it is.
That's sort of mine. I've got a welder, and I used to have a roll of purple duct tape this last week, and so holding stuff in place while I try to get it all Teflon together, and so. Yeah, we sort of make do a lot of times and hope for the best. But yeah. Well, I'm going to have to get off and start getting the roaster preheating, and I'll start loading buckets up. And I'm going to try to get my son in here to video some of that. We're going to put out another video of sort of bean to cup I've been working on. So I've got the part where we plant the seed all the way till we load the container and unload the container in the States. So I'm going to finish that video up by loading the buckets, weighing them, putting them in the machine, roasting them all the way till it goes into the bag, until it goes into the box and gets its shipping label to go out. We're going to try to do a video, like an 8 or 9 minute video of that entire process. And so I've been working on that for 2 years and hadn't finished it yet. But that's Eli will do some videos and some stills tonight of us doing some of the different steps of that. And so hopefully it'll come out pretty quick. And on the next podcast, we're going to talk a little bit more about the book that I'm writing. It's called The Accidental Coffee Farmer. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And if you ever decide to come out to the farm, Mr. Richard, we need to talk about dates that you'd come out to the farm, because there's a lot of times that are cheaper than others. I think in March or March or something like that, whenever I went back that last time, May the 1st, my ticket was like $650. And when I first started pricing tickets in July, they were $1,200. And so I finally locked one in for $804 for my July trip. So the prices of the tickets really fluctuate. And then the airports you fly out of make a big difference. You got to try a bunch of different airports. But anybody that's been out to the farm is going to be asked to write a few paragraphs that'll go in the book. And so I hope the book does well. We're going to the goal was to have it at Coffee Con in Chicago this year in October. I'm not sure that I'm going to make that, because it's I've only got about half of it finished and it's getting to crunch time. But so I doubt it'll happen this year, but we're going to talk about some of that. And so definitely going to get some input on what people want to know about coffee, the coffee business, or anything to do with that. Anyway, guys, thanks for coming on tonight. If you find it interesting, like it, share it, recommend us to a friend. And we'll do it again next Tuesday, same time. We might do one Sunday, but I'll post it if we do. And so thanks for your input and thanks for coming on screen, Corey. And we'll see you guys again next week. Good night,
Hey, yeah,
everybody.
thanks for having me on. It
All
was
right, anytime,
interesting.
man. Anytime.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah.
See ya.